Hello, and a very warm welcome to all of our guests today. My name is Nikki Jones, and I'm delighted to be your host for today's event, as well as for the remainder of this week, as we celebrate a full week of Everyone Can Automate. This event comes at a very exciting time in the industry, as you just heard from our very passionate CEO, Mihir Shukla. It's undeniable that there's a tectonic shift happening in the automation space, which, as we know, has been fueled by, well, a couple of things like a global pandemic, which then accelerated the digital transformation agenda. We have increasing technological innovations, and so the list goes on. But until recently, automation has been employed in businesses primarily looking to streamline and accelerate tasks for back office functions like finance, accounting, and human resources. All very important, but frankly, not the only game in town. As automation, AI, and work converge in the enterprise, new technologies are emerging that address the shifting skill set of enterprise workers and how they, in fact, we consume technology. We've all learned from Google, and we've learned from our iPhones, and if you're like me, from your children. We've learned from advances in consumer technology the need to make technology in the enterprise easier to use, easier to consume, and easier to access. If we look at this story through a digital assistant lens, we have this concept of skills, which are built-in capabilities. In an Alexa environment, a skill might be playing music or answering questions, giving you the weather forecast, which is changeable, as we know. Now look at this same concept, but within the enterprise, and the ability to understand and process a lot of content, especially as the volume and complexity of content continues to grow exponentially. Valuable information and insights vital for decision taking lives deep within your CRM, BPM, and ERP systems. To leverage the value of that information, businesses need to quickly, automatically extract and understand all of the relevant data and integrate that information into every aspect of business. So the role of automation is changing so that it can automate tasks and deliver information both from and into systems. The benefits are going to be amazing. Rapid deployment, easy to configure, easy to consume, human-like performance without the need for weekends, summer holidays, and dare I say, sick days. Now, for those of you who may have missed our many LinkedIn posts over the last week, Everest Group named Automation Anywhere a leader in its robotic process automation assessment for 2021. This is the 5th year we've been named a leader among the 23 vendors evaluated. You can imagine the excitement. We were recognized not only for our cloud native platform, our pre-built integrations, and our Google Cloud relationship, but our ability to bring new consumer-like experience to the enterprise through ARI, our bot-to-human interface, simplifying everyday tasks, which is where today's presentation and all sessions, in fact, this week will focus. And this is precisely why we're launching this event, to help companies like yours get ahead or stay ahead of the automation curve. Now, if you're anything like me, you'll no doubt have 101 questions. Could I encourage you to please ask those questions in the event chat, which we'll be monitoring throughout the event and we'll get to just at the end. So without further ado, I'm ready to get started, and I really hope you are too. There feels like no better time to introduce today's presentation, Everyone Can Automate, and I'm thoroughly delighted to welcome to the virtual stage Frank Kelly, who will inspire and empower you about the future of work today. Frank, over to you.
Great. Thanks, Nikki. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining today for Everyone Can Automate here at Automation Anywhere. I'm Frank Kelly. I'm the Vice President of Transformation Architecture here. And what that means is I'm basically here to help our existing customers scale faster and help our prospects adopt and join quicker, right? So In my previous 6 years prior to joining Automation Anywhere, I led the RPA program at first at EMC and then at Dell Technologies when Dell bought us. I spent 2.5 years in the business. So we started in a shared services organization where we centralized common functions, and through economies of scale, we reduced costs to the business. And then the program got so big that they moved me over to the IT team, which was Dell Digital, where for the last 3.5 years, I reported into the Chief Technology Officer. So as far as the program at Dell was concerned, we were in all of the business domains, right? So probably 50 plus business domains. And for example, it was like Dell Technology Services had probably 8 to 10 groups that we were working with there. It's services sales, services parts, field service and enablement, things like that. And so the reason we adopted RPA and Automation Anywhere in particular was we wanted to change the narrative around the shared services organization, right? So, centralized common functions through economies of scale, generate more operational efficiency for the business. And then if the program grew big enough, the service grew big enough, we would then move it to a lower cost region of the world. And it's there that the service would just sit and grow, and we'd add bodies over time, right? And so the leadership decided, hey, how can we automate these routine, repetitive, mundane tasks without having to go the traditional route of an IT automation, right? Which takes a long time, and sometimes the automations don't get over the hurdle of what IT will work on, right? And so we started looking at stuff because there was a lot of fatigue around that process, right? Around putting a spec together, getting on the IT roadmap, getting an automation created and whatnot. So the business kind of, unless it was a really big program, they would kind of just, do business as usual. And so we went out and we found, RPA, and, we chose Automation Anywhere because it was very easy to learn how to use that platform. And once we learned how to use that platform, it was very easy to actually create automations, right? And so worked with the teams, worked with the finance teams, accounting teams, tax and treasury, services, sales ops, manufacturing, supply chain, procurement, HR, sales, cybersecurity, IT, and others, right? So really drove the program throughout all the enterprise to get the most value for the program, right? And so what did we deliver, right? So we really delivered, conservatively over 100 million in RPA-driven impact, right? And we call it impact because it's not all direct bottom line savings, but a lot of it is, right? So 100 million plus in RPA-driven impact, created over 1,000 automations. And I should mention, at Dell, we chose the route of a federated model, right, with citizen developers. And that's because these are the newest tools which allow us to democratize the technology out into the business units, right? And the high-level overall strategy is, if you want to improve the operational effectiveness of your business, you have to move the ability to automate closer to where they're doing the work, right? Our traditional path of, specifications, a lot of handoffs between different business units is just become very inefficient. And the newer tools today allow us to do that. They allow us to move the tools directly into the business and democratize that business there with, of course, light touch and the proper governance, right? So we had a federated model. We trained, 1,700 plus folks during my 6 years there. And these are folks that just wanted to come and learn about RPA. And these are folks that also want to learn to be citizen developers. And we didn't spend a lot of time, caring really about, okay, if they come to the training, do we need to get a commitment from them? We really felt like we wanted to train as many people as possible to learn about the technology so that when they went back into the business units, it helped to drive the adoption of the technology to go viral within the business, right? So, and we knew if folks didn't want to be developers long-term, or if maybe they did it for a year and took a new job, that, we would still have advocates for the technology throughout the whole business. And when I left, I joined Automation Anywhere about 6 months ago. We still had 200 folks that were doing citizen development at least part-time, right? So 50 business units, on average about 4. And that's the power of the federated model and the citizen developer. And that's why we say everyone can automate, is that because that gets pushed out into the business And oh, sorry, I'm controlling the slides. I should have went to the next slide. So that's that we push that out to the business. That's why we say everybody can automate, because we are driving the technology into the hands of the business folks. Sorry, one too far. I'm just going to go back there. Again, 1,700 people trained, 200 citizen developers when I left, right? So very significant program. And so sorry, this seems to be going automatically. So what our goal was when we started was to really drive the adoption, right? So that was my main goal within the business: drive the adoption, scale the program, and then, sorry, for some reason this keeps going forward, and then transform human capital management, right? So that's really our North Star vision, is to transform that human capital management process. Folks generally start with, they're just going through the enterprise automation, standard routine, right? Like, I have some domain applications, I'm constantly upgrading them, I'm adding new features, and I'm making it better for the business, right? And then, a lot of companies started to adopt RPA, right? They started to democratize this out into the business unit. The leaders started looking at that, right? Dell Technology was is a leader in terms of operational efficiency, right? And so folks started automating this low-hanging fruit, right? So the repetitive, routine, swivel chair type kind of automations, mostly doing it in a back office environment, just continue to do that, right? And then the programs kind of would grow to a certain level, especially if it was a centralized program. It would grow to a certain level, and then growth would kind of stop, right? And then what happened was, we had this thing last year called the pandemic, which hit, and it started to change the way people were looking at their business, right? They said, hey, we have to transform faster, and we have to bring new tools in, because we're going to have a lot of challenges, right? So we have the challenge of employees are out sick, right? Or employees don't feel comfortable coming to the office. So there were a lot of challenges to businesses around, how do we deal with this new, with this pandemic that's driving a human capital management, right? And we saw this at Dell as well, right? So we saw our chief operating officer at Dell came to everyone and said, hey, even if it's not in your space, if there are areas where we can transform and people aren't moving fast enough, we want you to dive right in and do that. And so we did that with RPA, right? So we went into, for example, the procurement team, and we said, hey, we have a lot of opportunities that we've automated where we've insourced directly to automation. What we want you to do now is we want you to put a lens on it, and we want you to put a lens on the indirect spend, and we want you to look at areas that have the opportunity similar to these where we can insource directly to automation, right? And it was a huge impact to the company, right? And so this is really the start of folks' journey into like this people-centered intelligent automation, right? So again, doing a lot of back office type automations, and really trying to understand, okay, what are the capabilities of these types of tools, and how can we move it closer to the people that are doing the work, and how can we have it assist folks while they're doing that type of work, right? So that kind of had Automation Anywhere thinking and said, okay, we want to start to think about how do we combine back office and front office automations, right? Why is it so difficult for customers to automate today, right? And it's because companies have a siloed effect, right? They have a lot of front office stuff, they have a lot of back office stuff, they have employee productivity IT systems, but those systems were never designed to work together, right? And a lot of companies on average have, about 1,500 applications that they're running, right? I know at Dell, we had over 3,000, and there was actually a program to reduce the number of applications, right? So in front office systems like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics, they're designed to increase value, right? In the back office systems like SAP or Workday, they're built to increase business efficiencies, right? And then employee productivity systems like Office 365, or G Suite, they empower employees to manage their personal workflows, right? And so the challenges with all of these systems are, they're not connected right out of the box, right? They're all from different, organizations, right? And so the employees spend a lot of their time, trying to bridge the gap between these systems, right? And so they're losing valuable time, right? Productivity suffers and whatnot, right? And so it's a platform like Automation Anywhere that comes in and starts to break down these silos, right? So and so you can get started with any process, right? Your knowledge workers, and you can start to move your company over to this automated enterprise and bridge that gap between front office and back office. All right. And I often think of it, right, when I talk to folks, they're like, okay, well, what are the limitations of automations, right? And I say, well, there's really only two limitations to using the Automation Anywhere platform. One is if something really needs to go back to a human to have a cognitive decision made, then that's a limitation, right? It needs to come back to that person, right? So the person needs to stay in the flow. And the other one is just a person's imagination, right? And as we talk through some examples, you'll see that, as people start to look at these tools, they realize that, hey, I'm not only going to use the tool to mimic the work that I was doing every day, but I'm actually going to imagine different things that this essentially free workforce can do for me, right? So there's all sorts of great new ideas that get unlocked, right? And I'll give you a couple of examples from my days at Dell. One was, fraud detection, right? So fraud is a huge area where companies have to try to protect themselves. And traditional IT automations or off-the-shelf solutions generally don't keep up with the cadence that the criminals keep, right? So a criminal gets in there, tries one technique, and then changes their technique fairly quickly. But with an RPA automation and with a human in the loop kind of a process, they can detect the new techniques and then they can change their RPA solutions on their own very quickly to match the techniques that the criminals are taking, right? The other one is around stale quotes, right? So stale quotes tend to just sit there. At a company the size of Dell, we had hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of stale quotes. Because the hit rate on them is so low, you can't put people on it. It's just too expensive, but you can put the bots on it, right? And so even if you can get 0.5%, 1%, or 2% of conversion of those stale quotes, it's millions of dollars to the business, right? So great examples where now you're no longer limited, and you can get really creative around the types of solutions that you have, right? All right, and so this is why Automation Anywhere created this digital assistant, right? And created ARI, which is the Automation Anywhere robotic interface, and it's a way for every knowledge worker in the enterprise to interface with the technology, right? To have their own digital assistant, okay? And what we mean by a digital assistant is, hey, how many people are at their job doing work and they're doing something, they just like to look over their shoulder, just look over their right shoulder and say, hey, go do this for me while I do something else, right? And that's what this digital assistant is actually doing, right? So it's giving the knowledge workers, right, the folks at the desktops every day, the ability to kick off automations in the loop, right? Very easily, automations that are very customized for them, right? And so at Dell, we chased this since we saw Automation Anywhere, right? So we thought originally we could use RPA, a back office RPA, and integrate it with like a Skype chatbot, but we didn't have a good way to manage the volume and to just triage the traffic, right? But we did create a couple of them, but we knew they were limited, right? So we're always looking for another solution, right? And so that's where when we talk about, we say everybody can automate. That's where what we really mean is everybody can consume automation. Right. So if you have this federated model and you have your citizen developers and you think about an area like procurement, for example. So procurement, if you're sitting there and you're doing your job and all of a sudden one of your suppliers calls up and says something like, hey, where are my payments? Right. You really want to talk to your supplier. Maybe you have a couple other things to talk to them about, but you don't want to sit there and go through all your systems and generate reports. So now with the ARI Digital Assistant, your citizen developer has created this menu on your desktop, and you're just saying, supplier lookup. And you hit the button and you put the supplier number in, and you continue to talk to the supplier on the phone while ARI has kicked off in the background a bunch of automations that are doing things like looking at what are the outstanding orders, What are any outstanding payments that we owe them? Are there
I can't
orders that haven't
change
been
this
invoiced yet? Like all those
PowerPoint.
things that you would need to do to get a full view picture of your relationship with that supplier, right? Other things, other areas in procurement where you can use a digital assistant are, vendor, onboarding, right? If you have a new supplier that you want to onboard, maybe there's a bunch of things like, and I'll date myself with this one, right? We used to pull Dun & Bradstreet reports all the time, and so, but maybe you have to go out into some, some data providers and find out, okay, is this a supplier that's going to meet our standards in terms
There's
of,
no way to do it.
Financial stability and whatnot, right? You that's work that the bots can do for you. Like, you don't want to have to be doing that type of work, right? Order creation, you can just tell a bot, hey, using your digital assistant, go create this order for me now, right? So, and other areas, right? So like sales operations, using your digital assistant to create on-demand reports for sales and marketing, right? Like as you get closer to the end of your financial period, whether it's end of month, end of quarter, end of year, maybe you want reports, more often, right? So that's how to think of this digital assistant now, right? Is you have this ability to quickly and simply create these automations that sit on the desktops of your workers that invoke, a number of automations while they're doing their job, right? Happens. So as we go through a program, we have a digital assistant, we have a good digital transformation program. What starts to happen to your enterprise, right? And we believe at Automation, if we believe to be a digital enterprise, you need to digitize all your processes, right? And create a digital workforce that complements, your human workforce. Okay, and complement is a key word because everybody has concerns around AI, automation, and RPA eliminating jobs, right? So, and we used to talk to folks all the time. We would say, well, RPA isn't like a traditional automation. It doesn't. It doesn't go live on a Monday and then 400 people are out of work. It's bits and pieces here. And then you can move those folks around to backfill through attrition. And a lot of times folks are getting a better job and are doing more valuable work than they were doing before, right? So there's a lot of benefits there. So so we talk in terms of complement, right? It's now, hey, we're freeing up that mundane stuff that you did using your ARI digital assistant. And now you're much more effective at your job, right? You're doing much more than you ever thought you could do, and you're just feeling better about your job, right? So some examples here, right? So margin increases, right? So think about ways. We all have things that we do every day in our job where we said, hey, if I had more time, I could just do it differently. I could do this much better, and I could maybe drive more margin in the business, right? Upsell opportunities is another example where, folks, they just don't have the time because they're so busy. And now if they automate a lot of the mundane stuff that they do, or maybe they use an automation to create an upsell opportunity, right? We had an example where in our small and medium business sales team, they had to, Michael Dell asked them, how come we're not following up on, how come we're not directly following up on purchases from a previous day with a very targeted email that says to someone, hey, Frank Kelly, saw you bought a Precision laptop. Click through here now. These are the most popular accessories. Go ahead and order now at a discount, right? So all sorts of opportunities. This goes back to the idea of, we're just limited by our creativity, right? So in comes ARI, right? So let's talk a little bit more about ARI. Automation Anywhere is set out to deliver a solution that addresses this strategy of driving a digital solution into the workplace, right? And the reality is there's going to be a lot of opportunities in each of your departments of your enterprise, right? On the front lines, in the back office, anything you can use to scale, right? And it's new because we haven't really had this tool before, so we haven't been able to think about, okay, how am I going to create that, right? So so want to hit a couple of examples here, right? So up in the top center is the contact center. So imagine if you're a contact center agent and a customer calls and says, hey, I want to get a status update in my order, right? So at Dell Technologies, you would have to go to 3 different systems. And then if the order shipped but wasn't delivered, you'd have to go out to the transportation company's website, and you would have to get that information, pull all of that back, and then provide a holistic view to the customer on what the update is to their to their order, right? And that's not really what you want to be doing on the phone, right? You don't want a lot of dead air space. So now with Ari, if you're in the contact center, your citizen developer in that center, which understands all the processes, right, is an SME in the process, has created this automation for you where you just click on the one button, you put the order in, and then you can talk to the customer about other things while the bot in the background pulls that information, brings it up to you, and presents it to you in a format that you can easily read out to the customer, right? Again, it's looking over my shoulder and saying, hey, go look up this order while I talk to the customer, right? HR, right, is another example, bottom left, right? On-demand reporting, right? Or status lookups, right? A lot of companies, as when people resign from the company, there's a lot that has to go on in a very timely fashion. And now they can partner with the bots to do that using Ari, right? Things like, hey, did we remove them from the benefits payroll so that, we're not paying additional months for their benefits when they're no longer working here, right? How can I get, somebody from the executive suite calls up and says, hey, I'm doing something and I need an updated headcount report, right? So on-demand information like that is now available because the robots are pulling that for you, right? They're doing all the legwork. Things like finance, right? On-demand reporting, treasury reports. How many days outstanding do I have payments from my customers? So sales and sales ops, right? Order creations. We're going to talk about that. We have an example we can walk you through in a little bit. So just what I'm trying to do with this slide is trying to get the creative juices flowing for folks, where are the opportunities for Ari, right? So think about it again. I always go back to, I just want to look over my shoulder and tell somebody to go do something for me while I do something else, right? So here's an example. Here's that contact center example I told you we would have, and it's around, this is some back and forth between Ari and the human, right? So, human wants to say, okay, what's my order status, right? The bot goes and pulls all that information, analyzes it, and then presents it back to the call agent so that they can get back to the customer with it, right? And then there might be some follow-on steps too, right? He might offer the customer some courtesy credits, right? The customer might say, well, I want to make a change to my order, right? All that can be done while interfacing with Ari, right? And so a lot of back and forth that created some dead airspace now with the contact center agent is now consumed with more valuable work while the bots do the work in the background. Okay, and then same thing around generating quotes, right? So a lot of back and forth interfacing with the bots to create quotes, and we had one of our examples at Dell was. We had a lot of margin leakage around maintenance contracts because the contracts weren't renewed on time. And if the customer didn't have a problem, they didn't call in. So there might be a 2 or 3 month gap between when their last contract expired and when we get back around to getting them to pay for a new one. And that's direct margin leakage, right? Especially with these big data centers that Dell provided support for. So we had bots creating those quotes, sending those quotes directly to customers and channel partners, asking them to send POs directly in. And we close those margin gaps, right? So a lot of opportunities there. And again, this is where, we're talking like, hey, this stuff is going off like popcorn in folks' minds, right? To create these good outcomes for the business. And then really, I have a couple slides here to wrap up, but to maximize your automation potential, as I mentioned earlier, Dell went with a federated model, went with citizen developers, right? And so I'm not going to drain the slide, but a couple of key points here, right, is that the business units now have the power and the ability to go and to create automations on their own, right? So, that's new these days, right? And so around that fatigue around, well, I keep asking for an automation, I never get it. Now IT can go back to them and say, hey, we have a program for you with proper governance, but it's easy to do, and you can create your own automations, right? Speed to digital transformation. So we were a medium complexity project, start to finish is 6 to 8 weeks, right? And that's ideation, documentation, coding, validation, testing, and launch, right? So really, really fast programs, right? And then you end up with this huge operational savings, right? You end up with, headcount productivity savings, reduced outsourced spending, and then there's other things around value creation and risk management that we haven't really talked about yet, that drive the organization forward. Okay. And then let me see. So in summary, right, if there's some key takeaways that I'd like the folks here to leave with today, it's that the new technology is easy to use and easy to automate, right? And it's providing more benefits than it ever has in the past. Like if you haven't looked up RPA recently, the Automation Anywhere robotic interface, the ARI digital assistant, is a step function change in the amount of benefit that RPA can drive into your business, right? So Automation Anywhere is the only package, in my opinion, where you don't have to be a software engineer to create the automations, right? You can be, one of the best folks that I had on my staff came right out of the credit and collections organization, right? So very easy to learn how to use it and very easy to create automations once you do. And we had a program for 6 years at Dell, and we didn't have any hiccups in the program at all. So reliable, robust, adds a lot of value to the business. If you do have a RPA program or you're starting one, I want you to democratize that out into the business units, right? That's the only way really to get it to go viral. I mentioned that's those citizen developers. I had the equivalent of 100 citizen developers out there in the business units. I would have never gotten the funding to hire 100 developers, right? And the time is now, right? You have to stay ahead of your competition, right? So I show those numbers conservatively, and I say conservatively because we couldn't measure all the benefits, or in some cases, people wouldn't share the benefits with us. Dell was over $100 million in automation effectiveness, right? That they weren't going to get without RPA. And then, expand quickly, right? If you have the federated model and you have good governance, you expand quickly. I can tell you from experience, thousands have already done it, So take those, those are the key takeaways for me, for you, for the presentation today.
Thank you, Frank, for that presentation. Every time I listen to you, I always learn something new and something exciting, something fresh. Today was how to stay calm in a crisis, a live one, streaming to 1,000 people. I know that there were some challenges there, and I apologize to everyone, but I hope you will all agree that Frank delivered exactly what we needed him to do. Now, we're going to take a quick look at Q&A in a second. I think we've got a heap of questions that we just won't have time to get to, but we'll come to you we'll come to you afterwards. Friends of Everyone Can Automate, we have an offer for you. If you would like to start your journey with ARI now, we are sharing with you a discount code entitling you to 50% discount on your ARI licenses. Now, as you might expect, terms do apply, so please flag your interest by dropping us a note to everyone@automationanywhere.com, and we'll send you the information about the offer and how you can get started. Just to recap, that's friends@automationanywhere.com. So, Frank, we're almost out of time. I think we might have just time for one quick question.
Sure.
In a nutshell, can you summarize for me, what's your advice for getting started moving from traditional back office to front office? How would you just move the can? How would you get going?
Right. So great question. So asked it a lot. The ARI product is available at the A360 platform. So one, I would contact Automation Anywhere, make sure you have the A360 platform and the ARI automations. And then it's around education. It's around getting it out into the business units, having them understand what the capabilities of that tool are. Get the tools in the hands of those folks in the business unit that like change, that like automation, and they'll do the rest for you, right? They will start to consume from you. They'll push you for the solutions. We started in HR. I mentioned in HR and finance because there's a lot of stuff around reporting where you just like to be able to quickly tell somebody to go run a report for you, right? How many reports, month-end reports, quarter-end reports take, 2, 3, 4, 5 days because people are assembling them through Excel spreadsheets, right? So I would start in those organizations, or really any organization for that matter, right? We'll have really good low-hanging fruit, digital assistant type use cases. And, feel free to reach out to us, right? So I work with the sales team. So I go into our larger accounts and I work with them on, okay, where should we start automating? So happy to work with a lot of the folks that are on this call today.
Amazing, Frank. Thank you very much indeed. You heard it here first. Get in touch. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. Sadly, we're out of time, and I want to take just a second to thank you for being here with us today. Frank, thank you for being with me today. I hope you've enjoyed the content. I hope Frank has inspired you. Please don't forget we're back here tomorrow with our very own CHRO, Nancy Haig. Super excited about her session tomorrow. Nancy will share her journey with automation in HR. So please tune in and bring those HR colleagues with you. Take care and thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.